Alex Belfield's latest attempted comeback tells us something about both him and about the age we live in, I think. His man, a convicted stalker, jailed in September 2022 after what the judge rightly called a vicious and continued campaign of abuse against people like Jeremy Vine. Belfield is again trying to package menace as entertainment under the misappropriated title of Voice of Reason. It's not reason, it's madness. It's worth pausing to remember the scale of his offences: campaigns of stalking against Jeremy Vine, Bernie Keith, Ben Hewis, Philip Dehaney and others, with endless YouTube content, emails and defamation that destroyed reputations, careers and mental health. And and this is the point where it becomes so significant, the personal telephone calls to their families and so on, the invasion of personal space. Now, 2 years into his 5.5-year sentence, Belfield is out on licence. The conditions are strict, or they should be, and they should prevent him from profiting from his crimes, from contacting his victims, from using his online platforms to whip up the same poisonous notoriety. And yet, within weeks of his release, he's advertising a speaking tour, secret venues and books written in prison, and he claims police and probation have no reason to cancel his plans while alleging that dark forces are plotting against him. He's even suggested quite falsely that he's entitled to a £100,000 payout for lost earnings. The authorities have flatly denied all this, and now his tour, the so-called tour, has been cancelled. What makes this more grotesque is the context. The victims are still living with the consequences. Liz Green has spoken movingly of how Belfield's decade of harassment left her suicidal, left her medicated, and cost her years of her life. Philip Dehaney is pursuing a civil case against Belfield publicly outed after Belfield publicly outed his HIV status in a video, mocking him in ways that had a devastating professional and personal impact. Jeremy Vine compared the evidence to swimming in sewage. For Bernie Keith, it was so overwhelming that he came close to ending his life. To this day, Belfield shows no remorse. His Voice of Reason output is full of the same tropes: that he's a political prisoner, a victim of censorship, a man silenced by the establishment. In reality, his licence conditions are not unique or bespoke, as he claims. They are precisely the conditions imposed on any offender judged to pose a continuing risk, designed to protect the public and ensure that he doesn't monetize his notoriety. And this is the misapplication of Voice of Reason. A reasonable voice takes responsibility, acknowledges harm, and uses speech to build rather than destroy. Belfield twists reason into grievance, casting himself as a martyr of free speech while belittling those he tormented. The self-styled convicted talker cannot accept the words that he's used are not simply free expression, but stalking, harassment and abuse. They are clever, and that's where the problem, I think, lies, because his brilliance masks his viciousness. And there's also a wider lesson. Platforms like YouTube allow Belfield to grow an audience of hundreds of thousands, despite repeated warnings, complaints and pleas from victims. Even after his conviction, many of his videos remain online. The BBC too has questions to answer. Female staff at Radio Leeds were raising alarms as early as 2011, yet their complaints were brushed aside until a high-profile man, Jeremy Vine, was targeted. And that institutional neglect created space for Belfield to escalate. And now, as he tries once again to sell himself as entertainment, we see the same cycle: sensational promises of tours, whispered claims of prosecution, monetised grievance, but probation officers were right to intervene. Allowing a man branded the Jimmy Savile of trolling to tour the country, monetising his notoriety, would shred public confidence in justice and re-traumatise his victims. Belfield's story is not one of free speech curtailed, but of speech weaponised. It's a reminder that the internet can be turned into an arsenal of cruelty, and our institutions have been too slow to respond. His Voice of Reason is not reason at all. It's the cynical recycling of menace for profit. And the best response to Alex Belfield is not to give him another platform. It's to ensure his victims are heard, their dignity restored, and his licence enforced with rigour. Because the real voice of reason here is not his, but theirs.